Good evening, loyal listeners. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Feliz Navidad, and Buon Natale. This is Jason Knight, president and founder of Chicago's own Supernatural Current Studies and host of the SOS-Radio podcast. I want to wish all our listeners a very happy holiday season. This evening we're going to be doing things a little bit different. Because it is Christmas, we're recording this episode the night before Christmas Eve, I decided to give my fellow SOSers and brothers in arms a little break this evening to be with their family. So tonight, you get my lovely voice and a special guest. Tonight we're going to be talking about celestial anomalies. And no, I'm not talking about Santa and his reindeer. I'm talking about aliens, UFOs, and other aerial mysteries. With me tonight, as I mentioned, is a special guest, Mr. Randy Tucker, owner and operator of SomewhereOutThereRadio.com. Randy, say hello to the listeners.
Good evening, listeners.
Randy is reporting with us from rural southwest Michigan. And as I mentioned, he does own and operate SomewhereOutThereRadio.com. Listeners, be sure and check that out. But before we start talking about aliens and UFOs and abductions, Randy, tell us a little bit about yourself. What made you turn your eyes skyward, and why do you consider yourself an alien expert? Why did you launch SomewhereOutThereRadio.com? What could you tell us?
What it was, actually, I've been very, very interested in this subject for, over 40 years. I've been reading about everything I could get my hands on, watching every video or anything I could see. It started when I was about 10 or 11 years old. My mom, when I was a kid, used to get those, Inquirer magazines. Back, it wasn't even a magazine yet. It was like, those black and white newspapers. And I had seen something on there about this alien abduction thing. I had like a drawing of this alien, and it just never left my mind. It just captured my attention. And, this all started with the UFOs from that, and the aliens and extraterrestrials. And, of course, my curiosity just snowballed from there into, all the other paranormal type of things, the unknown, the ghosts and hauntings, cryptozoology, with Bigfoot and, different things like that, chupacabras. And it, went into secret societies, Bilderbergs, Illuminati, things like that, all the way into government cover-ups like the Montauk Project, Philadelphia Experiment. And, even recent things like the Mandela Effect is just incredibly fascinating to me. And, but it really just all started with the UFOs. Is how my interest got started.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's interesting. Just mentioning this topic, just breaching this topic, leads down so many different rabbit holes.
Yeah, absolutely. And once you start talking about one subject, it just seems like it branches out into so many other ones, and that's how I got so just encapsulated in this whole thing. Like I said, it started out with the UFOs, but then just the whole unknown aspect of everything is what really got me involved. And that's what I really did with my website, SomewhereOutThereRadio.com. I started it as kind of a paranormal 101 resource. Something, somewhere where even a novice could go to get at least a high-level overview of all things unknown as topics, that we talked about, the, UFOs, abductions, cryptoids, all the things like that. I also have quite a few people who are experts in their own field in this, lined up, getting ready to do interviews with me, so those will be posted on my website very, quickly in the near future as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, and, any of the listeners who've checked out our past episodes, we've breached the subject of aliens and UFOs here on the SOS-Radio podcast before, but I'm not an expert. And frankly, aliens and UFOs, they scare me. That stuff freaks me out. I'll take a ghost or a dog-headed demon running after me in an abandoned cemetery any day over extraterrestrials. I don't know what it is, but it freaks me out. And with this particular episode, not having the guys with me, I really wanted to talk about this subject. This is something that we've wanted to really dive into on this show, and I couldn't think of anyone else better than yourself, Randy, to kind of kick off the UFO segment. And, maybe if this goes well, I would love to have you as a repeat guest in future podcast episodes. I think tonight I want to talk about a bunch of different topics kind of at a high level. And in the future, if you agree to come back, we could start really zeroing in on particular topics, whether it is different types of aliens that are out there, or Planet X, or abductions, or string theory, or what have you, and really dive into those at a later time, give them their own episode. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely, because, we could go on for days and days talking about this type of thing. Maybe tonight go over a little, high-level overview of kind of everything on there. Then in subsequent, appearances and interviews on your show, we can maybe delve into some more specifics about some different things, like you said, like specific on abductions or, the different types of species of aliens that are out there and things of that nature.
Excellent. Great. Well, so let's just jump into it. So you had this deep-rooted, kind of from a young age, interest in aliens. You've launched your successful website, somewhereoutthereradio.com. That begs the question, have you ever had any personal experiences with extraterrestrials, aliens, UFOs?
Not so much, I'd say, aliens themselves, to my knowledge anyway, but, different sightings, different weird experiences, sure. Even back, in high school, as I said, I was in rural southwest Michigan, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. One night in high school, driving down the road, saw this ball of light, a little bit larger than normal, up in the western sky, kind of low. So I stopped my car and kind of watched it a little bit. And all of a sudden, another smaller, sphere came out of it, started moving around erratically, moved back up into the larger sphere for just a couple of seconds, and all of a sudden, just boom, it was gone. And that, of course, piqued my interest on that. But a very interesting one. Back around 1995, actually, I was living up by Grand Haven, Michigan, about a quarter mile off of Lake Michigan. And one night, kind of late, maybe around midnight, my girlfriend at the time, came running into the house screaming that there was a triangle in the sky above the car. She was kind of hysterical, but I did make out triangle and sky. So, of course, I bolted outside, And when I got out there, it was no longer directly above where we were, but I could see it through the trees. This was probably around like late October, early November. The leaves were off of the trees, so I could see it very clearly through there. It was flying very low, no sound whatsoever. And I did have large lights at the three corners of it. And then, just kind of drifted off over the lake and then couldn't see it anymore. And, in a few months after that, we were watching, remember that old show In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy?
I do.
Yeah, we were watching that. And they were talking about UFOs, and sure enough, they had these drawings of the same thing that we saw, these triangle things. And I also later found out that stretch along Lake Michigan from South Haven up to Ludington, Michigan, had the most UFO sightings in the country that year. And Grand Haven is right about the middle of that.
Wow.
And, if you jump on my website, there's an area talking about what is known as the Belgium UFO wave, which was from, around November of 1989 until April of 1990. So there's only like 4 or 5 months where there were an estimated, 13,500 people that witnessed these things, and approximately 2,600 actually filed written statements. They were tracked on radar. They were chased by Belgian Air Force F-16s. And if you go to my website, the picture on there from that wave looks almost identical to what I had seen up over Lake Michigan. That was an interesting experience when I saw that, because the triangles seem to be the biggest thing out there for the past, 10, 20 years that people are seeing.
Yeah, that seems to be the most common reported visual anomaly UFO, that triangle. Why do you think that is? What is this? Do you think it's an actual extraterrestrial craft? Is it a government secret experiment, completely terrestrial? What's with this triangle thing?
Well, getting back to what I think an unidentified flying object, a UFO, actually is, I think the key word is unidentified. Just because we don't know what something is doesn't mean it's of extraterrestrial origin. You know what I mean? Right, it could be exactly. Just an aerial vehicle unknown to us, or just a general population anyway. It could be military technology, as you had said. And, we don't know, just because we can't identify it doesn't mean it's automatically, some aliens up there driving this thing around. So it could very well be something military. Like the triangle crafts that everyone has been seeing, several years ago, LAX reported 2 triangle crafts coming across the Pacific headed towards Nevada, had them clocked at approximately 6,000 miles per hour. And I know they talk about these, it's pretty quick. And, the military, hasn't come out and said that they have these things, but there are people that have kind of leaked things saying that they're called the Aurora craft, something like that. So it's very possible that these triangles are actually, government or military technology, sure.
So that if it is government or military technology, some people believe that technology came from extraterrestrial technology. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. We took a huge leap. Take a look at, the technology that the world had, hundreds or thousands of years ago, then up until, say, the last 100 years. And we've just gone leaps and bounds beyond what we had. And, a lot of people say it started with, the Roswell crash, things like that. But actually, I think it might have been a little bit before then. Even back in the 1920s, 1930s, the Germans under Hitler were, supposedly having contact with aliens and things like that. And they had some crazy technology back then. They were trying to build, UFO type technology back then with the Vril, which was like a UFO type of craft. It was never actually seen flying, through the air or whatever, but they were building it. There's actually pictures of that. I think I might even have pictures of that on my website as well. I'm not sure. But then they had the Nazi Bell, which is supposedly a time travel device that they were using, And then after, the fall of the Third Reich, obviously, we had about 125 of the top scientists from Germany come over to the United States after that. And, I kind of have to laugh. People talk about, the American space program. We didn't have one. We had a German space program, because we had, these different scientists from Germany come over and kind of bring their technology, rocket technology and things like that over here. So, I think, yes, it could have come from, beings or something, extraterrestrials outside of our, area here that we have. But I think it's very possible we got a lot of the technology for our current, crafts and things like that from there. Sure. Not only crafts, just computer technology and things like that.
Wow, that's very interesting. One thing I want to backtrack, you mentioned, and I'm glad you mentioned, it's kind of the definition of a UFO. Not everything we see in the sky that we can explain ourselves, the general public, is necessarily an extraterrestrial craft, right? We have to take into consideration when scanning the skies, we got to think about satellites. Nowadays, everything could be a drone. Drones are, I think, the source of a lot of UFO claims. So not everything, listeners need to be aware, not everything in the sky is extraterrestrial related, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And, like you said, like it could be drones, things like that. Another interesting personal experience I had, which reminds me of that, here about 12 years ago, I took a trip out to Rachel, Nevada, which is about 2.5 hours north, through the desert from Las Vegas. It's the closest inhabited place to Area 51 with its whopping 98 population, Wow. And, there's a very well-known little bar/restaurant there called Little Alien. And I, had always seen and heard about this place, and I had to go. I had the chance to go out there, so of course I was going to, drive 2.5 hours through the desert in the middle of the night to find this place, right? But anyway, you head out of Vegas on Highway 15, up to 93. Then you cut over on Highway 375, which is actually dubbed the extraterrestrial highway. It's about a 40-mile stretch of road that runs along the north side of Area 51. And there are no crossroads during that stretch, only like 2 dirt roads that head, back over towards, where Area 51 is at. I was driving through there one night, and literally I only passed 2 cars the whole way on that trip. And it was pretty wild when you're out there because the speed limit's like 75 or 80 miles per hour in a 2-lane road, right? And you see these like jackrabbits bust across the road in front of you, it kind of freaks you out. And then I started seeing these eyes along the side of the road. I'm like, what the hell is that? And all of a sudden I almost had a cow about by the road, and I see these signs that says, free-range cows. Of course, the first thing I think of is, what the hell do these things eat out in the desert, like little lizards or something, But anyway, I'm heading down this extraterrestrial highway over towards Rachel, Nevada, and actually right before I turned on there, I noticed an ambulance had turned off of that, back down 93, heading south. Didn't think anything of it. But I was about halfway down the ET highway towards Rachel and noticed these flashing lights coming up behind me in the road. I figured it was this ambulance, right? It gotten someone taking them back to Rachel, or it might have been a small hospital there or something. I wasn't exactly sure. But, I figured when I got closer, I would start to slow down more and more. I kept an eye on it in my rearview mirror, and I got up pretty close, maybe a tenth of a mile or so behind me, and just these different colored flashing lights.
Yeah.
And I just stopped my car and pulled it over, and it never got any closer. It was sitting back, like I say, about a tenth of a mile or so, just flashing these lights, and I kept watching it, and I started really wondering, what is this thing? Why isn't it getting closer? Why is it just sitting there,
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it just disappeared. And, of course, I kind of freaked out a little bit and, floored it and headed down this highway in the dark,
What do you think?
I wouldn't hit a cow,
What was it? What do you think
and
that was?
It's a little alien, and walked in. It was exactly what I thought it was like. There's like 6 old guys that sitting at this bar, talking conspiracies and stuff. It was awesome. But, that was a little freaky, And a couple years after that, I talked to a gentleman who actually does documentaries, all over the world. He'd been out by Area 51 many times, and I told him about those flashing lights. And he said that he had witnessed those many times himself. He said he had them come up as close as maybe 100 feet away, and it's so dark out there, in the desert at night, you can't really make it out. You can just see these lights. Yeah. He said all of a sudden they just disappear, no sound or anything. He said he had no idea what it was, either.
So on the same extraterrestrial highway,
yep,
you have someone else corroborating your story.
Correct. He said many times happened to him out there.
Wow.
It was freaky, man. It was one of the, it's one of the scariest I've ever been in my life, I have to admit. I was out there by myself. There's no cell phone signal whatsoever out there. And, of course, my mind's going crazy. I'm thinking, what if this is some crazy military thing? They're following me and they're going to take me out in the desert and bury me. Nobody would ever know.
Or you're about to get abducted and probed. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And, another interesting thing there, too, when I was on my way back, there's this place out there there's this mailbox, actually. It's a white mailbox called the Black Mailbox, right? And it's where a lot of people congregate to try and watch things out over Area 51, things like that. So I pulled over to get a picture of this, famous mailbox. And, it's so dark I had to turn the headlights of the car over toward it, And I took one picture, and I thought, I'd take a few more just in case that one didn't turn out. And as I took the second picture, my battery in my phone instantly went dead. Now, I had charged this fully right before I headed out that night, just, to be sure I had full battery in case I started seeing things, and,
Sure.
So after I got out of the area, back down towards, 93, I had full battery power again in the camera,
So just around that mailbox.
Yeah, just out there, it just drained at everything. And, I talked to that guy that did the documentaries that had seen the flashing lights as well. He said the same thing. He said when you get out in that area, he said they take multiple battery packs for their cameras and stuff like that because they drain so quick out there. On that, my guess is that, there's some type of a military thing out there with some type of radio frequency that will drain those so you can't take pictures and things like that. That's my guess.
I was gonna ask, so how far from Area 51 proper is the Black Mailbox? Roughly?
Now, from my understanding, it's, around 25, 30 miles. I'd have to check on that again, but if memory serves me correctly, it's about that far. It's quite a ways. But they don't let you get that close.
If the military does have some sort of zapping technology, that's a far radius. That's a powerful, weapon, if you will.
Correct. And I guess, I don't think it's coming from that. I think they have them all over, out in the desert, out around that area. Like, I've, read and seen a lot of things where they talk about there's actually ammonia sensors out there in the desert that actually sense ammonia on a person's skin. And that's the way they can detect if people are out there.
Man, that just raises all sorts of questions of legalities and civil freedoms, I would assume. But
oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So it's safe to say that, you have had quite a few encounters with the otherworldly, the extraterrestrial, which brings you to here, where you are today, being a alien expert and the operator of SomewhereOutThereRadio.com. You have a story, a ball story. And I don't know if this is particularly extraterrestrial in nature. I'll leave that up for the listeners to decide. But it's anomalous and it is strange. Would you mind telling us your ball story?
Sure.
Sounds funny. Sounds funny.
Yeah. Actually, when I moved into the house I live in right now, like I say, it's out kind of in a rural area. I'm surrounded by trees on 3 sides of my house. It's pretty thick,
Now I've seen pictures of your property. It's dense woods. Yeah,
exactly. Especially in the summertime leaves. I mean, you can hardly see 10 feet out past my property line around there. And when I first moved in, I started noticing every once in a while there'd be some like little baseballs or a soccer ball or something just sitting in the backyard, and they're usually not just one, but like a couple right next to each other. And like there are no like younger kids or anything in my neighborhood anywhere close to my house. There's a few houses right around exactly where I live close to a subdivision, but no kids down there. No way anybody around me. There's no houses on either side of me, or way back behind me, about 200 yards behind me is a river, a large river. They could hit these things through the woods if they tried.
Because they're so dense.
So dense. There's no way. And then about every I don't know, 2 or 3 months or something, there'd be another one back there. And it'd usually be right at the edge of the property line. And I'd go up and get them. Generally, I'd either throw them away or, leave them or whatever, keep them in my garage, something like that. And then, there's different balls would show up right there in my property line. And one thing that's really, really weird is about 2 years ago, I was sitting in my kitchen, and I can look out across, I have like a ranch with a walkout basement. So I have like on the upper levels my kitchen with like a little deck out there. I was sitting up there looking out one morning, and I noticed this like blurry thing up in the trees, kind of right next to my house, right behind it. And do you remember the movie Predator, how that thing first appeared like up in the trees?
Oh, of course. That kind of camouflage, fluid, kind of liquidy kind of appearance. Sure. Is that what you're...
Yeah, and that's what it was up there. And I kind of squinted my eyes and kind of rubbed it a little bit, make sure I was awake. But it was only in that spot. And then I was focusing on this thing, and it went away. Then I noticed it down lower, because it was up in the trees a little bit, down lower towards the edge of the property in the back. And I sat and watched it for maybe 10, 15 seconds or something like that, and it just went away. And it was only that one spot that was like, I just described it as blurry, Now, I don't know what it was, what happened, or I was just seeing things or whatever, but, that was just a weird experience there. I have no clue what that was. I don't know if it has anything to do with the balls or not. I don't know. But, I really started taking a look at this ball thing, and it's either baseballs. Some of them look old, some of them look new. I thought maybe there was dogs bringing them out there. I was looking for teeth marks. I saw nothing. Some of them, they were the large plastic, baseball things. I found a ball out there that was like the coating, like the, the entire outer skin, I guess you'd say, of the baseball itself was gone, and just a heavy thread underneath sitting there.
What?
So, I found a toy tractor sitting back there. It's kind of weird next to the balls one day. And, just recently when I was getting all the leaves off, this fall, I had set 2 of the balls back there, kind of by where I originally found them, just to see if they would move if something else showed up. Sure enough, about 5 or 10 feet behind them, just into the woods a little bit, there was a large plastic baseball sitting there by the other ones, and it's just odd. And I have no clue what's going on with the ball story, but that's kind of a high-level story about what's going on with the balls in my yard.
Yeah, and again, just to reiterate for the listeners, no kids in your subdivision. Next-door neighbor, nowhere close. And
there's a couple of people across the street, some older couples, but I've never seen any smaller kids or anything like that around there ever.
Ever. And these balls that appear, not distressed in the form of teeth marks, claw marks, like it's an animal bringing them to your property line.
No, not at all. And like I said, I've even found a soccer ball out there with the other ones before.
Yeah, what kind of animal? I don't want to know the animal that can mouth a soccer ball. Right?
Exactly.
And some of the balls that appear are distressed as far as weathered, old looking. Some are new. Is that correct?
Yep.
Any
No rhyme or
pattern?
reason. So I found wiffle balls back there sitting right next to a normal, like baseball or whatever. And like I said, it's rarely one at a time. Sometimes, but sometimes it's like a couple, and they're right next to each other. So they had to have been placed there. No question about that. By what, I don't know. But, it's just an odd thing going on.
Now, how many balls would you say you've collected over the years, roughly?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I've been here 6 years at this location. I've been at least 15 or 20, probably.
15 or 20. I don't know, listeners, have any of you experienced any sort of, mysterious object placement, kind of like Randy Tucker's describing with these balls? If you have, please write us submissions at sos-radio.com. Let us know what you experienced. Randy, I don't know what you got going on in rural southwest Michigan, but combine the balls, these objects appearing out of nowhere, with that camouflage fluid sort of thing that you've noticed in your tree that one time, and that's a strange story if I've ever heard one.
Yeah, and it only happened one time, thank goodness. I don't want to see that again. It was kind of freaky, obviously, and if any listeners by chance have seen that as well,
absolutely,
please let us know. And another kind of weird thing too, last year, not just a ball out there, I found like one of those lawn recliners, that you sit outside in, those thin cushions that go on those. I found one of those back in my yard too, and I went to my neighbors across the street. There's one like directly across, one kind of catty corner, as I say, a couple older couples that live in both houses. Took it over. I asked him. I said, "Is this yours? Did this come from your house?" And both of them are like, "I've never seen it. I don't know what it is. It's not mine."
Wow.
So I have a bunch of balls, a toy tractor, and like a cushion off of a yard recliner show up in my yard.
Your property has become an extraterrestrial dumping ground.
God, I hope not.
No recycling.
You know what? Thank goodness, though, nothing has ever happened in the house or anything. No weird feelings, no noises, no nothing. I've had weird experiences in other places that I've lived, but nothing at all here.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I speak from experience. It's not fun when it follows you home.
No, you can attest to that. And I had moved these balls around a little bit in my yard and stuff when I really started paying attention, like this year and stuff. And I was thinking maybe I should bring up closer to the house or something. I'm like, nah, I'll leave them back at the edge of the property line, because they always show up right at the edge of the property line or maybe back into the woods, maybe just 5 or 10 feet, not very far at all. And I definitely need to get a webcam.
I was going to ask if you've thought of recording that property line.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to. I was
If you
going
do,
to
yeah, let us
fall.
know.
I have so many leaves around my house falling down from all the, dense trees and things like that. That thing would have been going off every couple of seconds just with leaves. So
Sure.
I definitely need to get something out there with that. But yeah, that's an interesting story I'm going to keep an eye on, obviously.
Yeah, let us know how that progresses, especially if you catch any strange video footage. I just want to touch real quick on that being entity, whatever it was that you saw on the tree line for a few seconds.
Yeah.
That reminds me a lot of, and I know, Randy, you and I have talked offline about this quite a bit, Mr. David Paulides' research, Missing 411, the strange disappearances of hikers and hunters in and around state forests and state property. Some people claim before disappearances happen to see a figure very similar to the one that you just described. What do you think about that? Have you heard of that?
Yeah. I try not to think about that, but you are exactly right, though. And I was listening to an interview with David Paulides here back over the summer, and there was actually a lady on there talking about the exact same thing that I had seen as well. She referred to it as like, saran wrap,
shimmering kind of.
Yeah. You kind of just can't see quite through it. You can see through it, but you can tell something's there. You know what I mean? And it described it almost to a T as the exact same thing I did. And I would have to go back and listen to the interview, but I'm 99% sure that the lady was in Michigan as well.
I was just going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe she was in Michigan as well.
Yeah, I try not to think about that either.
Well, very good. So then tell me, what is placing these balls? Who are flying these crafts that you've seen? What species of aliens exist? You know, we always hear about the Greys. Other people talk about the Nordics, the reptilians. What's going on out there? What's the truth?
Well, what the truth is, I have no idea. Just, and the way I look at all this stuff, I don't sit there and ever say, here's what it is, for sure, because I don't know. I've researched this stuff, so much over the past 40 years, and I try and take everyone's input that I hear talking about it, everything, and then just kind of try and form my own opinions on there. But what exactly it is, I will never say, here's what it is. But as you had mentioned, the Greys are probably the most notable, obviously. That's the stereotypical alien, 3 to 4 foot in height, small bodies, large heads and eyes, very minimal ear, nose, and mouth features. But they're also, much larger, more human-looking species that you had mentioned, the Nords or Nordics, blonde hair, blue-eyed, 6 foot tall, and I think you had mentioned reptilians.
Yes.
Which are also reported to be pretty tall with more of a grayish-greenish scaly skin. And also, insectoids, which supposedly look very similar to like a praying mantis, or something like that. And which is odd. I mean, have you ever noticed how a praying mantis's head looks like a typical alien head? Those things freak me out.
Oh, I guess you got a point there. I'm picturing it in my head right now. You're right.
I was at a gas station one time, pumping my car with gas, at night, sitting there just kind of looking around as my gas, is going in, and all of a sudden this praying mantis lands on top of my car next to me, and it's like facing forward. I'm looking at it, and the thing doesn't turn its body, it just turns its head and looks at me. Dude, freaked me out. I wasn't done pumping gas, I turned it off, got done, jumped in my car, hoping this thing wouldn't jump on me, and took off, hoping it wasn't still there when I got home.
Man.
It just freaks me out. But anyway, I've heard a lot of people, supposed, people that had inside, a scoop with the government, worked for the government, secret projects and things like that. I've heard several, quote unquote experts out there say there are, approximately 72 different known species of aliens.
72.
72.
Now, the ones you mentioned, the Greys, the Nords, the insectoids, the reptilians, are those the predominant ones? Are those the ones that most people experience, talk about?
Yeah. Yeah, those are the ones most. And, again, the Greys are probably the most common. And, there's a lot of speculation on those too. Some think it's just an alien itself. Some people think that they're like little android type things and almost like robotic or whatever. But, I don't know. But again, those are by far the most common.
Do they come with certain personality traits? If you see a insectoid, you're in trouble. Or if you see a Grey, you're pretty all right. They're pretty safe. They're friendly. They're benevolent. Are there any personality traits that come along with these kind of major categories of extraterrestrials?
Well, from what I had read and watched from interviews and things like that, mostly, Greys are not like, violent or anything like that. Although they are, kind of tied to a lot of the abduction cases and, for experiments on people and things of that nature. But the reptilians, or insectoids is a different story. I've heard that they can be quite violent and, out to really kind of mess you up. So,
wow. Well, you mentioned it yourself, so I'll just jump into it. I was going to keep it for later, but abductions, what? I have personal stories of extraterrestrials and dealing with abductees, which I'll talk about later on in this episode. But what's going on with abductions? Do you believe that people are actually being taken from their homes, experimented upon, some say impregnated, and then brought back with no memory of the event? Is this stuff really taking place? Do we need to worry about this?
I don't know if you necessarily need to worry about it, but I do think it's happened and has gone on. Obviously, there's just too many cases. One of the very first ones was way back in, 1961 in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, the Betty and Barney Hill case, where, they were driving home from a little vacation, saw a bright light in the sky, moved toward their car. Barney got out with some binoculars, trying to get a closer look on it. It was getting closer. He ended up screaming, "They're coming to get us," or something like that.
Wow.
Got back to the car, and then they ended up, waking up about 35 miles from that area. And that was one of the first really widely reported ones. But, probably the most famous abduction case was that, Travis Walton back in 1975 in Snowflake, Arizona. There was a movie made about it.
Fire in the Sky. Yes. Terrifying.
Yes, and I heard him say in a recent interview, well, I say recent, maybe a couple of years ago, that, it was somewhat like that, but he said it was very Hollywoodized, as he put it. He said the basics of the story were there, but they did elaborate on it to make it more exciting for Hollywood or whatever,
Sure.
But, he was a 22-year-old logger. He was out with 5 other coworkers. They were heading home after a typical workday, saw this golden disc hovering above a clearing that they were driving by. They stopped their truck. Walton thought he'd be a big shot and got out and went towards this thing. And the others said this blue-green light came out of the object, struck Walton, lifted him up off of the ground, and threw him back about 10 feet and just dropped him onto the ground. And, the other people kind of freaked out and booked, left him behind, Nice friends, right? And I don't know. I'd probably do the same thing. I hate to say it, but, So anyway, they went to, a local deputy to report what had happened. And when they went back to the scene, he was nowhere to be found. And obviously under suspicion by the authorities, those other men that were with them, they were administered, polygraph tests. The results did conclude that all of them were truthful and the tests were conclusive. And after 5 days, Walton woke up on the side of the road. And he said, he did not wake up naked as depicted in the movie, but he did wake up, made his way to a gas station payphone to call for help. And, he actually failed his first polygraph test, but afterwards said they had used quite a few words that he wasn't familiar with. So they gave him subsequent tests, and each time they had given him one, he was being truthful in his testimony on all accounts of the abduction after that.
So upon returning, he was cognizant. He remembered what took place to him?
A little bit. He went under different hypnosis and things like that and recalled bits and pieces, but really not a whole lot. There's a lot of it that was elaborated in, obviously, the Hollywood movie on it. And he did say that, someone was making another movie about that, making it a little bit more real to life and not, Hollywoodized, as he had put it.
Man, I know anything that could take me, could erase memory, whether take me from my home, take me from, as you said, out with 5 other friends, with no rhyme or reason, and can't be tracked or proven or disproven. That's terrifying to me.
Absolutely.
That it's terrifying. That just the image of a gray sends chills down my spine. I can't handle it.
I'd freak out.
So, Randy, the UFO expert, you would not like to experience an extraterrestrial?
No. No, being very honest.
Plain and simple. You'll talk about it, you'll report on it, but you don't want to experience
it. It fascinates me, but, I don't want to do it. It's like, it'd be cool to parachute out of a plane, but I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, me and you both. Cattle mutilations.
Yeah.
Something else that comes hand in hand with UFO stories. Are these real or not?
Yeah, absolutely. Too many reports from farmers, police officers, things like that, especially out west. Quite a few instances where the farmers will find these cows dead out in the field, and, it's definitely not something by like an animal, a mountain lion or something that attacked these things, tore them apart or anything. It's like they'll have like one eyeball missing. Its jaw will be scraped, down to the bone. There will be organs missing out of it, but there will be no like blood all around the thing. It's like this, like a laser instrument or something was used to take these organs out of it. So it definitely wasn't an animal tearing it apart for the meat and leave it out there to bleed to death or whatever. It's obviously very, surgically done. There actually have been cases where they found cows, out in the fields where their bones were just kind of crushed and they say the only way it could happen is if it was dropped from a very high altitude, and just the impact on the earth would do that to the bones.
Oh, my God. So again, eyeballs, organs, going with this experimental theory, which is why some people say the humans are abducted, experiments, right? I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know what to say about that. I don't know anyone who's ever experienced any sort of mutilation or anything like that, but it's rampant. It's out there. It's synonymous with what we're talking about.
Absolutely. There's definitely something going on out there, experimenting on these things and stuff. I mean, it's just very, very obvious, and I'm, 100% convinced that is happening.
Wow. Well, on that note, let's give the listeners a break. Let's take a break. I said I would let you, the guest, choose this episode's music. Let's take a listen to what Randy Tucker has chosen for us. And we're back. That was interesting. Randy, what was that? What did you choose for us?
That was one of my favorites by one of my favorite bands called Buffalo Tom. The song was Late at Night.
Late at Night by Buffalo Tom. Why did you choose that one?
One of my all-time favorites. One of my favorite pastimes is actually just getting out and driving by myself out on the highway in the dark. And as I say, where I live out here in kind of a rural Michigan area, get out on the highways, there's very few cars, out on the highway at night. And I'll get out there and have certain songs that I'll listen to, which I call my night drive songs. And that one was definitely one of them I usually have cranking out my car when I'm just going out and driving around.
Perfect. Well, hopefully the listeners enjoyed it. Okay, we're back. Let's talk about the Anunnaki. This is a word that I've learned probably within the last year or two, and it seems to be becoming more and more prevalent when discussing aliens, UFOs, extraterrestrials, the Anunnaki. Am I assuming this is another breed or type species of extraterrestrial? And what's the sudden popularity with this?
Well, to start with, the Anunnaki, it is considered like another, race of beings, I guess you'd say, from, in our distant past. These are people that many believe are responsible for modern man on our planet anyway. The person that probably brought this theory to light more than anyone was a Russian-born American author by the name of Zecharia Sitchin. From my understanding, he was a scholar of ancient texts and writings. He claims that in the ancient Sumerian texts from Mesopotamia, which, is where Iraq and Iran are now, that these beings came to Earth to mine gold and other minerals. And he claims in the writings that they eventually decided to mix their DNA with the inhabitants of Earth at the time, which we would probably refer to as like an ape type of man or Homo erectus, to create the now modern man to use as a slave race to mine for them and work in the fields of Samaria. And, something interesting to note, he says that in the text, it says that the first man that they created, they named Adamu, or Adamu. Now you take the U off of that, and what do you have?
Adam.
Exactly. First man, which is kind of interesting how that came about. And, and some actually, they also believe that the Anunnaki were actually the Nephilim from the Old Testament in Genesis 6. Those that came down to Earth, took the females at the time, had children who, were supposed to be giants. So that's something kind of interesting, an interesting theory as well.
So what implications does that, if it's true, what does that have for what implications does that have for modern man? Are we all part alien hybrid? Are we part Anunnaki, part Nephilim?
According to this theory from Zecharia Sitchin, from what he had gathered from the ancient Sumerian text, that's exactly what he was saying. That they took the very primitive early man on Earth and basically mix their DNA with them to create us now, basically, yeah.
Now, we've talked about on the SOS-Radio podcast in the past, Joe Erie, who also kind of leans towards the extraterrestrial aspect of the show. Humans, people with blonde hair, blue eyes, they have this recessive, Anunnaki Nephilim gene. And these people are therefore alien hybrids, and they are inclined to have sixth sense abilities, easily receiving of paranormal signals about them. What do you think of that? Have you heard
it's
that?
Very possible. There's, people, they're just basically more enlightened. And I've heard that as well. And I've heard that, the Nords, that alien species is more in line with those of the Anunnaki, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, beings like that. And they just merge right in and live with us. They know more that they are like that than, we do, and kind of just blend in. But, we were definitely a very primitive, planet until something, whether it was Anunnaki or whatever, came here and did something to our DNA to transform it. There's, no question in my mind about that.
Wow. Primitive culture. How did, ancient pyramids and all these wonders of the world, how did they come about? People say through extraterrestrial intervention, whether it was the Anunnaki or some other extraterrestrial race. Do you agree with that, or is that just pure old, human ingenuity at its finest?
Well, it could be human ingenuity, but the reason I would have to disagree with that is the pyramids are not just in Egypt. They're all over the entire world. And back at that time, we supposedly would have had limited communication. We didn't have the internet, connecting the entire world at that time. So how did all of these pyramids, which are very, very similar all around the world, come to be? You know what I mean?
Wish I knew. I don't know. What else?
Well, you had mentioned something about the Anunnaki and why this is coming, into play more and more recently.
Yes.
Get into the subject of, Nibiru, also known as Planet X,
Planet X,
and several other names.
Yes.
Some people just think it's a dwarf star or whatever, but there are people that believe, and Zecharia Sitchin actually talked about this, that they believe Nibiru is actually the planet that the Anunnaki were from. And, this planet is much different. The fact that it is not just orbited around our sun in this galaxy, like the other planets, it orbits in what's known as like a binary solar system. It loops through two different galaxies, not just ours, which takes about 3,600 years for a full orbit.
Wow.
And something else of note on this, it also moves clockwise in its orbit instead of counterclockwise like all the other known planets. And I find that very interesting as well.
So, and that's exactly right. This Nibiru, this Planet X, some say, scholars, scientists say that it is there and it is in a direct, collision path, if you will, with our own planet. And that this Planet X, Nibiru, could potentially destroy us in the very near future. What's up with that?
Yeah, and a lot of people say it's either it could be on a direct collision course, or if not just that, just even when it gets into our solar system anywhere close, this gravitational pull is and has been responsible for all kinds of cataclysmic events on Earth whenever it passes through, and kind of comes through, wipes everything out, everything starts over again, and we go on. But obviously the Earth is going through some changes right now, and whether it has to do with that or not, I have no idea. One thing, I was down in Florida, went down to Coral Castle down there in Florida maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I'm trying to think, years kind of blend together these days. But, there's this obelisk that's aligned directly on the North Star down there in Coral Castle. And when I was down there, I was talking to this girl in there who's a guide, and I was looking at it, and she said, she says, over the past few years, it's been off about 1.5 degrees, which I thought was really, really odd. because basically that would be saying that the Earth was, a degree and a half off of its axis, or where it's normally supposed to be at. So whether it's this, Planet X, Nibiru, Wormwood, whatever you want to call it, is starting to have an effect on it, I don't know.
Well, you just brought up something else really interesting, Wormwood. Let's put that one on hold for a moment. But so you mentioned Nibiru's, its complete orbit is roughly 3,600 years. Is that correct?
Correct, and it goes through 2 different solar systems, actually.
And just right there, just in that statement, what implications are there? 2 different galaxies, 2 different solar systems.
Exactly.
2 different timelines?
Yeah, that could open up a whole other, conversation on that, because we just, have always just understood our planets and our solar system traveling around the sun, but here we have one that's, going through 2 solar systems, probably around 2 different suns, looping around one, going to the other one. And, how does that interconnect all of these galaxies,
Wow. Just blew my mind. So going on the 3,600 year theory, the Bible says what? Earth is about 6,000 years old, I believe.
Yep.
Is it safe to say that each time Nibiru comes around, we could also trace that time to a cataclysmic event in the Earth's biblical history, whether it be the Great Flood or some other, just devastating, earth-shattering event? Is Nibiru to blame? Am I on the right track here, or am I off?
You could very well be. Like they say, even all these scientists are saying, when this thing comes closer and closer into our solar system, closer to Earth, that the gravitational pull of this thing, as it's coming through, could most definitely, cause cataclysmic, events on Earth.
And you just mentioned the Coral Castle down in South Florida with the poles, am I saying that correctly, being off suddenly?
Yeah. Well, what it was, he has like an obelisk with like this cross in it that looks up at the North Star, right, directly on it, and it's off a little bit. According, I was there during the day, I didn't see exactly, but according to the guide there, and she sounded kind of, confused about it herself,
And some might say this is the gravitational pull of Planet X or Nibiru having an effect on our Earth.
Correct. Because, in the past we know there has been pole shifts on the Earth. An author by the name of Velikovsky, I believe it's back in the early 1950s, wrote a book called Pole Shift, and talking about how the Earth actually had shifted on this axis, in the past, and it's proven. Like they found, mastodons up in the Antarctic completely frozen, intact in the ice, but it had, tropical vegetation still in its stomach. So obviously it had to freeze pretty damn quick, because it wasn't digested, in there. So there's proof that this has happened before. Now, whether this planet was responsible for that or not, who knows? But, we know it did happen. And it's very possible it will happen again sometime in the future. Hopefully not in ours lifetime, but
absolutely.
No, because I'm being selfish.
I think we all could be selfish at that point. So the Anunnaki, are they, or the Greys, or the Nords, are they among us, Randy Tucker? Do they live among us? Do we encounter them every day and just not know it? What do you think about that?
No, I don't know about the Greys on that, but I do think there are species of aliens and stuff that we encounter on a day-to-day basis, yeah. Ones that look just like us in there. And, everybody talks about, aliens, extraterrestrials coming from other planets and things, but maybe they do through wormholes, or they have, different ways of moving across galaxies that we're not aware of or whatever. But I think you also have to look at it as not extraterrestrial but interdimensional as well. When you start getting into things like string theory, superstring theory, M theory, where scientists, they say at least, have proven mathematically that we live in at least 11 different dimensions. They say we live on like a vibrational strand. And it's kind of like, turning in like an AM radio. It goes staticky, staticky, boom, you get a channel. Turn the, knob again, static, 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 boom, you get a channel. Kind of like that. Right. And sometimes these vibrational strands, as they're vibrating, will actually cross. Now, then that opens up a whole new door. Okay, what resides on these other dimensions? Is this how some of these things, like with abductions, happen? obviously people aren't seeing spaceships land in their front yard, and neighbors are looking out the window saying, what's that going into, Bill's house? Oh, here he comes out with Bill. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
never, no.
No. So if you look at it like these things are crossing over interdimensionally, it would make a lot more sense if people were being abducted, like in homes and things like that.
Without any sort of witness or anyone to corroborate what happened.
Correct. And, and this could even go into what people, see entities and things like that they could believe are what they call ghosts or something like that. They could be crossing these vibrational strands and actually, for a brief second or whatever, seeing something else from that dimension on there. From that, we could even go into cryptoids, Bigfoot and things like that. They say that people follow these footprints and all of a sudden they just disappear. They just stop, for no reason. They don't continue.
Right. You're right.
So that could come into play with that as well. There could be other creatures in these things. Some people, I'm kind of getting off subject here from aliens, but we talk about, thunderbirds, which, people have described some of them as, like ancient, like pterodactyls and things. It's possible they could be, crossing these dimensions and people seeing for a brief second, then they go back, Now,
do you think, well, I guess since we are off the rails a little bit, I'm curious, things like Bigfoot, things like the Thunderbird, things like the pterodactyls or petrodactyls, do they have command, do you think, over these slips, if you will, or does it just happen at random times and they find themselves here and then back there?
I have no idea, to be honest with you, Jason. That's a great question. I don't think things like a Thunderbird would necessarily say, hey, I'm going to go into, the year 2016 in Illinois and try and pick up this 11-year-old boy today. You know what I mean?
Which happened.
Like, reports that happened.
Right.
And, but you get other things with, like, Bigfoot or something like that that's more human-like. It's possible they could be thinking that.
So something with a higher level of intelligence.
Yeah. Or, the cryptoids, yeah, but, you get into different, alien species, things like that. Very, very possible that they could be doing this on purpose, coming back and forth, no question about it.
Man. And see, that's what is freaking terrifying. Anything that could do that and enter my office where I'm recording at home right now and take me, screw that. That is all. I will leave that up to you, exactly. Randy Tucker. Well, these, and you brought up that point with these portals, time slips, the string theory, M theory, abductions. People don't see the UFOs landing in Bill's front yard, but yet Bill claims he's been taken. He's gone. He's got loss of time. And he comes back with this horror story. That reminds me of my own personal experience with UFOs and abductees. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to, share that with you and see what you think.
Oh, absolutely.
The first one happened November 6th, and there's a YouTube video on this. Now, my partner in SOS-radio.com, Joe Erie, his father captured this UFO, right? We're going by definition, unidentified. This UFO in the sky over Chicago on November 6, 2016, just last month. This same aerial anomaly was also photographed. So Joe Erie's father videotaped this thing, and it's on YouTube. A friend of, we'll call him Mr. Erie, a friend of his 19 miles away photographed this same aerial phenomenon of the same event, the same object in the sky, 19 miles away. And I shared this link with you. It is up on YouTube. Listeners could go to the Chicago Zone Supernatural Current Studies YouTube page and look for a video called UFO Sightings in Chicago Caught on Camera, Real Footage, November 6th, 2016. It's a long title, I know, but it helps web crawlers find it. UFO Sightings in Chicago Caught on Camera, Real Footage, November 6th, 2016. Now, I share this with you, Randy. I encourage listeners to go out and check it out so you know what we're talking about here. What's your impression on that video?
Yeah, that was an interesting video on that. And, the key thing on that was there were multiple witnesses in different areas. That's key. When you just have one person in one area see something, nobody else did, no other reports, it's a little bit easier to, dismiss it or try and figure out what it was. But when you have multiple witnesses, it definitely takes on, something else. more reputable on that. But it was weird because it definitely wasn't normal flying craft. It was spherical. It was a ball, no question about that. It almost was like changing shape slightly and, changing color slightly. It almost looked like it was spinning in some spots, moving a little erratically. But the thing that really got me was in a couple of the still photos where it was moving. It actually looked like it broke into like three different, pieces, almost three different spheres, almost like it was spreading apart into three different things. That's what really caught my attention on that as well.
So you think, at the end of the day, legitimate? Do you think that was something unexplained up there, or does it have a terrestrial explanation, do you think? And I know it's impossible to say with 100% certainty, but in your professional opinion, what do you think?
Oh, it's definitely, something out of the norm, we'll say. I can't sit there, I don't think any of us can say, there was a gray driving this thing or something like that. But it was definitely not something that you would see every day up in the sky around Chicago, no doubt about it. Again, multiple witnesses. It was a ball. Even if it was like a drone or something like that, it wouldn't look like a ball up there and moving that erratically and then seeing as splitting. You know what I mean? So definitely unidentified, no question about it. Now, whether it was some kind of technology created by humans or something, I don't know. But if it is, I've never seen anything like that.
Wow. And just another little tidbit of information about when that video was taken. It was roughly 2 a.m. So this isn't, 5 o'clock aerial rush hour, So I'm personally ruling out, like, helicopters, blimps, right? Even a drone flying that early in the morning is probably few and far between, I would assume.
Definitely was not that.
So, all right, good. I just wanted your opinion on that. Listeners, check it out on our YouTube channel. I actually saw a craft one time in my life, only once. I was, this had to be at least 15 years ago. I was in Illinois. I was driving southbound down Cumberland Avenue. You might be familiar with Cumberland Avenue. They're on the north side of Chicago. It was probably 11 o'clock at night. I had just gotten off a restaurant shift. I was a server at the time. I was driving home. I was going to my house on the northwest side of Chicago, which was also a haunted house, as an aside. I've talked about that particular piece of property in past episodes. But as I was driving southbound down Cumberland Avenue, I was passing this expansive forest preserve. I lived in a neighborhood called Forest View, and it's bordered by these large expanse of Cook County forest preserves. As I was driving past this one particular intersection, I believe it was Cumberland and Irving Park Road, something to my right caught my eye, and I turned in my car, I slowed down. There was hardly any traffic on Cumberland Avenue at the time. And I saw these bright flashing lights in the woods. And it had to be maybe half a football field away from where I was in my car. And they were red, they were white, they were blue. At first I thought I was seeing an emergency vehicle kind of through the woods. I believe it was early fall. So I thought I was seeing an emergency vehicle on Irving Park Road from my station on Cumberland Avenue through the trees. So I slowed down thinking this emergency vehicle was going to come up eastbound on Irving Park Road. I didn't want to T-bone it or anything, but that's not what it was. The lights started getting higher, and they got higher. And they went through the trees, they broke the treetops, and they went up into the sky. I was in full panic mode. I flew home. At that point where I was probably literally 7 minutes from my house. So I flew home, I busted into the front door, and I said to my girlfriend at the time who was living with me, my mom, my cousin, we were all there at the house. And I busted in, I said, "Oh my God, I just saw a expletive UFO. You're not going to believe this. Come on, we got to go, we got to try to find this thing." So sure enough, we did. We jumped into my car and we started driving around the neighborhood. We eventually, probably 20 minutes later, found ourselves in Franklin Park, Illinois. A small suburb there, kind of by O'Hare Airport, which is another interesting point because there's been many, many UFO sightings around O'Hare Airport. But we found ourselves in Franklin Park. Now, this is well past midnight. And sure enough, we see in the sky these red, white, and blue flashing lights. So we had a disposable camera on us. I was well into, supernatural occurrence studies at that point, so we always had, disposable cameras or a 35 millimeter camera within reach in case anything went down. We could document. So we busted out this disposable camera, and we started taking pictures of this thing in the sky. I was the one taking the photos. Now, flash forward to when I got the film developed, there were tiny dots of light in the sky. Not knowing what was in that photo or what we were attempting to shoot, you wouldn't know what it was, so I can't say it's conclusive evidence. But I did see a police officer in Franklin Park at the time, after we saw it and took the photographs. Drove away, and we saw a police officer sitting at a stop sign, and I decided to kind of pull a U and pull behind this police officer, and I got out of my car, and I kind of had my hands up in the, not offensive position, I guess, not, you know what I mean? Like, my hands are held up like peace, right? Peace. Hey, I just want to talk to you for a second. I had my hands up. So I went to his driver's side, and he rolled down his window, and I go, I'm sorry to bother you. Listen, I normally wouldn't do this, but... And I told him the story very briefly, and I told him what we had just seen in his own town and attempted to take pictures of. And he goes to me, he's like, you know what? Normally I would tell you to get the hell back in your car and get out of here, but... And he went on to say that the station, the Franklin Park Police, had received numerous reports that evening, up to that point, of something anomalous in the sky. And people who lived in the town who were calling the police had described it as a blimp. Someone described it, I remember the police officer saying, a cruise ship in the sky. There's no cruise ships in the sky. And he made an interesting point. He said, if there were going to be blimps or something like that, helicopters flying over their airspace, they would have to be notified. Mm-hmm. They couldn't just, take a blimp and, cruise it over Franklin Park, Illinois, without letting the proper authorities know that this was going to be taking place, especially being close to O'Hare. So he said, he's like, I don't know what it is. I haven't seen it, but we've gotten numerous calls, and these people are saying all sorts of weird things about what they're seeing in the sky. So I don't know what that was, but that was my only encounter with a craft, and I will never forget it as long as I live. And most people, when I tell them the story, they think I'm nuts. But I do have witnesses. We did take photos, but the photos were inconclusive. It was just too far away, and the technology at the time wasn't there to take that sort of a shot.
Yeah, you definitely never forget those experiences. Definitely. Now, this thing that you saw, how could you tell at all how large it was?
I couldn't. I mean, I would say the size of a car. You know, I mean, it wasn't a ship, like the mothership, like we see in Close Encounters, But it wasn't a tiny orb. I would say it was probably the size of a vehicle, a normal size sedan, if you will. That's what it seemed to be to me, recalling the story.
Yeah, and the reason I ask, Illinois really has been kind of a hotbed for UFO activity, for a lot of years. I know here a while back over in Tinley Park, Illinois, multiple witnesses had seen this UFO flying low to the ground, and police saw just thousands of witnesses to it. It was a very famous one, and there's one here a while back down around St. Louis area on the Illinois side, where people saw this just, a large UFO flying low to the ground, no sound at all. Thousands of witnesses, police officers, very reputable people, all saw this thing. And like you said, around O'Hare Airport, just a lot of sightings around there. And there's a lot of stuff going on around Illinois, no doubt. And really around the Great Lakes, there's actually a lot of UFO activity.
And what do you think it is about the Great Lakes? I know we have some bases here. There's talk about deep underground military bases throughout the Midwest because there's no fault lines or something like. They're safer, I guess, these deep underground military bases in the Midwest as opposed to the coastal states. Is it something to do with that, with military, with just technology located in the Midwest? Why do you think we have
it could be that. It could be the lake itself. There's a lot of people that, all over the world have seen these things, not just on land, come up out of the water. They see these things dive right down into the water. They see lights underneath the water. They'll see things come up out of the water and head out. You never know. It could be something in Lake Michigan that they're attracted to, or it could be something in Lake Michigan that they actually go down into. Just, it's where they stay. It's possible of that as well. There's been around a lot of large bodies of water where people see, off the coast of California by Malibu, a lot of people have seen things going into the water, coming out. A lot of people in the Navy have seen different crafts, different lights under the water come up, out, and fly off into the sky.
Wow. So, of course, the USO, right? The unidentified submersible object is submerged. Okay. Wow. Yeah, it's incredible. It really is. Which kind of brings me to my last story. I've talked about the first two. I've talked about the first two on this podcast before. The recent video that Joe Airy's father took, and the UFO over Franklin Park. I've touched on those, but one that I haven't had time to talk about is the abductee, the gentleman that I interviewed, who claimed to be an abductee as well as his family, 2 children and a wife. This was pretty intense, and I had an adverse reaction to being in this guy's immediate surrounding. It happened. He lived in a town called Killdeer, and Killdeer is right next to Long Grove, Illinois, which is notoriously haunted. By the way, Killdeer, located off of Cuba Road. Cuba Road is a very haunted road here in Illinois. A lot of people don't know, but my trade, my background, my degree is in journalism, writing and editing. I was a freelance writer and editor for years before I got into my current career. And Dave Black, member of Supernatural Current Studies, co-host to the show, got me in contact with this gentleman who I'm going to keep him anonymous for now until I could actually get him on this show. So I'm going to keep him unnamed for now, but he put me in contact with this gentleman because he was writing a book, and he was looking for an editor for his book, and I was looking for work. Now, this gentleman from Killdeer claimed to be, along with his family, a constant abductee right there in Killdeer, Illinois. The most noxious, it's an expensive neighborhood, Americana, right? This is where he is. This is the type of person he is, and his family. So Dave Black brought me this opportunity to edit this book, make some extra money, and I said, sure. But before I grabbed the guy's manuscript, I wanted to meet him. I wanted to know more about his story. I felt that would just help me through the editing process. So Dave Black and I went to this gentleman's home one afternoon. I mean, it had to be 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This didn't take place in the deep recesses of the night. Broad daylight. Pull up to the house. It's a big house, obviously expensive. Met the guy, met his wife, met his kids. He brings us into his house, sits us in a den. Den is situated next to a kitchen, outside of which was a dining room. It was shotgun kind of style where we were sitting. We did these introductions. His wife and 2 kids left. I actually honestly believe his wife was taking the kids to soccer practice. So again, this is Americana midday, right? So now it's just me, Dave, and this man who claims to be a constant abductee. And he proceeded to tell us, he handed me the manuscript. It was a very thick manuscript. He's like, here, I'm documenting everything. This is my life. This is what happens to us. Take good care of it. So we proceeded to talk, just kind of shoot the shit, telling me his stories. And there's these fantastical stories. And as he's telling me these things about how he's abducted, how his children are taken and experimented upon, how his wife suffers excruciating pain after the fact, nightmares, hallucinations. He's telling me these stories, and I start physiologically reacting to it. I'm getting very paranoid. I'm getting agitated. I can't sit still. I start seeing, and I kid you not, Randy, I'm looking through his kitchen to his dining room. As I said, it was shotgun style. I start seeing these little humanoid figures, 2 of them, poking their little heads around this doorway that's between the kitchen and the dining room. And it's just for a second, and I'm seeing it out of the corner of my eyes. And these little heads are popping up and looking at us, watching us. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I want this job, I need the money, but I'm ready to just jump out of my skin. I can't be in this guy's house. And I'm grabbing Dave. I'm like, dude, do you see that? Do you see that? He's like, I don't know what's going on. You know, he was reacting too. He didn't see these little humanoid things, but he was getting agitated too. And all of a sudden, I got this blinding headache. One of the worst, I never forget this. It was like the worst headache I've ever had in my life. I felt like I was going to vomit. I was on the edge of my seat. I just had to, I got to get out. I got to get out. That's what kept going in my mind. Finally, I'm like, I need aspirin. Do you got water? Do you got aspirin? Do you have anything? And the guy's like, no, I don't. And I guess he could tell that it was, he's like, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm not okay. I'm seeing these things over there by your kitchen and dining room. He's like, that's them. That's them. So he gets up after he confirmed with me, yeah, that's them. That's these things that abduct me. He gets up in front of me. He stands up in front of me. He's very tall. Of course, I'm really short, so I don't know. But he gets up and he does this very dramatic motion with both his hands, like an old magician from like the 40s and 50s television series that wear the turbans, and they do that mesmerized motion with their hands where they hold their hands out in front of them, they shake them, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And he does this in front of me, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to die, right? And he does that mesmerized motion, and he takes a finger from his left hand, and he puts it on the bridge of my nose between my eyes, and he takes, his other hand, his right hand, and he places it very gently right below the base of my skull, right at the top of my neck there, and he kind of, he didn't shake my head, but I felt my head kind of vibrate, like he put a little bit of pressure, and then instantly my headache was gone. It was just gone. And he said, are you better? I said, yeah. And he goes, okay, now we can continue. And my blinding headache was gone. My anxiety, this panic attack I was having was completely gone. I didn't see these little figures anymore. And he went on with his story. And he went on to tell me that multiple times a year, sometimes, a few times in a month, his family will be taken right from this expensive home in hometown USA, taken right from his home, right there. And they can't control it. There's nothing they can do. They have these sensors, these machines, and he showed me one. I held it in my hand. I've never seen anything like it before, and I wish I would have photographed it or written down any, I don't remember if there was a name on it or a brand, manufacturer. I should have taken notes. I didn't think about it at the time because I just went through this intense thing, whatever it was. But he said these machines, he has them in his house throughout different rooms, will go off when an abduction is about to take place, whether it's changes in the atmosphere, whether it's energy that the beings themselves get off, whatever it is, triggers these machines. And these machines let out a piercing kind of siren. And the families know, okay, get together, sit on the couch as a family, it's about to take place. And there's nothing they can do. They just fall into line. And these machines, they're battery operated, and they had a cord. So sometimes the guy said when these things come, it knocks out all the power. There's no power. So he learned that there also has to be battery backup. So if the power goes out, these things will still sound. And the families could then brace and prepare for what's about to happen. And I'll never forget, he said they'll sit on this couch, and either the beings will come and take them, typically starting with the children, I believe, eventually ending up with the husband and wife. Either were beings or, and this is the weird part, these silver metallic-looking balls, a string of balls, will come through their walls or windows, enter the room that this couch is in, where they're sitting, where they're huddled, where they're waiting, basically. And these balls will enter them from the shoulder. It'll start with one person in the family, go into their shoulder, move through their body, out the other shoulder, into the next person, so on and so on and so on down the line. Now, it's important to note when this is happening, they're incapacitated, they can't move, but the family could feel what's going on. So they said, he said the pain is unlike anything you can imagine. You can't even describe how much it hurts, but they're unable to do anything. They can't move. Once these balls are done with the last person, exits the shoulder, enters the wall or window once again, disappears from the house. Gone. They wake up, they snap out of it, they go back to whatever they were doing, whether it was sleeping or whether it was just doing stuff around the house during the day. Happens day or night, doesn't matter. When these things go off, they know to brace. And I held this machine in my hand. This guy is serious, or he believes he's serious. He believes this is happening. I look at his manuscript, while we're sitting there and flipping through the pages. He's got color photographs, full color photographs of him and his kids, predominantly his kids, with strange markings on their body. Typically, they were in a pyramid shape, three markings. Some were just strange scratches in strange locations. And a lot of the locations were in private areas of the body, on the buttocks, in the groinal region, on the back of the neck. I remember that. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it was. But this guy is visited repeatedly, sometimes up to, a few times a month. But many times a year. And I don't know if it's still ongoing. We lost contact. But I would love to have him back on the show. But I'll tell you, Randy, it was so intense. From the stories to how I reacted. Dave felt it. Oh, another thing the guy said is that he has video footage of a spacecraft above the Twin Towers. That as the Twin Towers were coming down on 9/11, this spacecraft was harvesting energy or souls, if you will, from the victims of 9/11. And he said that once he trusts us more, once he knows we're on the level, which the guy's handed me his manuscript, I don't know how he can't trust me, but that he's got the video and he would show us. Of course, I've never seen it. But these are some of the claims the guy was making. I really would love to know some of your thoughts on that.
Well, that's a great story there. A couple questions. Now, did they ever move? Did they ever live in a different residence where this happened as well? Did the things follow them, or was it only in that place?
That's a great question, Randy. I don't have an answer. I don't.
Because I was wondering if, it happened before they moved to this home to try and get away from it or something like that, or if they were ever on vacation or something, staying in a cabin or something, or a hotel, if this stuff happened there as well. But what's weird, what really stuck out is, you saw these things in his house.
I did.
And he's just like, yeah, that's them.
Yes.
Like they were there.
Yes.
And it almost sounds like he's not just like an abductee, it's family, but it's almost like, I'm really going out here, but it almost sounds like he's not, human himself. He's like an alien himself. He's trying to get the word out about this stuff, but he's afraid of what, repercussions might happen, and he's trying to do it, but not, trying not to let others know or something like that, because there's just a lot of weird things there. Like, how would he have these things with UFOs above the Twin Towers? You know what I mean?
Right.
How would he have access to that unless he knew somebody or was in the know or something?
So what he said about that, the Twin Towers thing, was that it was actually on the news only once, for a matter of seconds, and then it was pulled. He just happened to be recording it at that time.
Interesting.
That's what he said. And now, that brings me to something else. You said something really interesting. How is he one himself? Mm-hmm. One thing Dave latched on to out of that whole experience was the guy's eyes. Dave swears, and I don't remember this. To this day, I do not remember this. But Dave swears, Dave Black, mm-hmm. that one of his pupils was more dilated than the other. And Dave had the sense, and I swear to God, Dave had the sense that eye that had the larger pupil, how did he put it? That he could feel like something was watching him from behind that eye. Something was controlling. In other words, something was controlling this person and watching us through that eye. That eye was the window, the monitor, if you will. the screen that was watching us. So that just gave me, when you said that, I got chills up and down my spine because I left that out, and that's the one thing Dave left with, that there's something behind that man.
Yeah, that's interesting. That whole thing throws up a lot of, red flags as far as, him just, quote-unquote, being an abductee. I mean, his wife had supposedly taken the kids to soccer practice.
Yes.
And you see these little things in the house, and he's like, oh, yeah, that's them. Who's to say that that's not his kids or something in that form? Look, or something like that, you know what I mean? And this cat throwing around his hands and healing you on the spot from the worst headache you've ever had in your life.
I swear to God, Randy, it happened.
I know. I totally believe you on that. The thing I'm looking at is, it would be, you obviously were there, you saw it, but just hearing what you told me, I just keep thinking, okay, there's more to the story than him being abducted. He's a regular one of us, just happened to be getting abducted by these people, you know what I mean? In the markings and stuff, these people could come in to his home, these entities or whatever, because he may not want to do that anymore or something. Might not want to keep the secret there like he's supposed to. And these things are coming in there saying, yes, you will, smack, 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 leave marks on your body or whatever. But there's just a lot of weird things in that story that would almost lead me to believe, just from the little bit that you told me, that there's definitely more to the story than him just being a regular human being abducted. You know what I mean?
So going back to when I asked you, do they live among us, right?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, God. What did I... Do you think I narrowly missed something there, or was he...
Absolutely. Absolutely. I wouldn't go back there myself.
Yeah, I'm going to try to... Now, Dave Black, this guy has had the same cell phone for probably the last, I kid you not, like 15 years. The same number, right? The same phone number. Same contacts carried over, phone after phone after phone after phone.
Sure.
I want to see if Dave still has this gentleman's phone number, because I would love to have him on this show with you and I, so we can pick his brain.
Oh, absolutely.
Real quick, have you ever heard of this ball thing, this string of balls that are almost like sensors that run through people's bodies in your readings, in your travels? Have you ever heard of anything like that?
I have not heard them, like a string of them. I have heard many reports of people having spheres in their rooms and would go into their body, like just one sphere like that, go in, out. But I've never heard of anything like a string of them going in, like, one shoulder going out the other or anything like that.
Yeah, and it was shoulders and it was multiple. How many? I don't remember if he said, but I'm wondering, since there were multiple people, there's 4 members to his family, does that constitute multiple spheres? So you're saying people alone in their room have a single sphere. I wonder if with multiple people being in line like that or huddled together like that.
Very possible.
Yeah. And what are they probing for? Oh, man, this could go on and on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great story, man. That really thought-provoking on that. There's a lot more to that story than the guy was telling you, no doubt about it.
Man, we're going to try to hunt him down for this show. Would you be willing to talk to him?
Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
I don't know if I'd go to his house. But...
The things you'll do for money, right? When you're just out of college.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother topic for another day. But, man, this was a great conversation. I'm really glad you decided to come on the show this evening, this special Christmas edition of the episode. Is there any final thoughts, any closing ideas you want to throw out there?
The way I always look at it, like I say, keep an open mind about everything. Just try not, when you see something odd that you don't know what it is, instantly think it's like an alien entity or something like that. What I always do is try and find a logical explanation for everything. Just like you, when you do your investigations for, paranormal and things like that, you try and find reasons as to why these things are happening, logical reasons, before you just go out and say, yes, this is a ghost or, a
Absolutely.
Trace energy or whatever. And I think that's very, very important to do that. The one thing that I've always, felt myself was, probably most of the things can be explained, whether it's like UFO activity, cryptoids, hauntings, things like that. But out of the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of witness reports on these things like UFOs, aliens and things, if you look at it like this, if only one of all of those reports was real, what would that mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like ghosts, hauntings, all the reports all over the world throughout the history of time, even if just one was legitimate, what would that mean for us? And I always, try and look at things like that. Most are probably just unidentified things. We're just not sure what it is. Don't want to jump to conclusions on it. But, it's real. There's stuff out there that's real, no doubt about it.
I agree with you, sir. Absolutely, 100%. Well said. Well said.
But anyway, it's been great being on your show, Jason. I appreciate it. Definitely like to come back again if invited, and we can delve into some, specifics about different things. I know tonight we just kind of did a, 30,000-foot overview of, a broad scope of different things relating to UFOs, extraterrestrials, and things like that. But we could definitely delve into some, specifics.
Absolutely. And again, thank you for being here. And the answer is yes. We'd love to have you back on in future episodes. I think our listeners will really get a lot out of hearing what you have to say.
I appreciate it. And for those listening, again, if you can go over to my own website on there, somewhereoutthereradio.com, check it out, see what you think, give me some feedback. There's going to be a lot more interviews coming up on there, more things added, weekly on there. So stop on by and check it out.
Absolutely. Listeners, again, that's somewhereoutthereradio.com, Mr. Randy Tucker. Again, as we always say, beginning or closing of the show, listeners, jump onto iTunes and give us a rating, good, bad, or otherwise. Ratings are the lifeblood of podcasters, so please look us up on iTunes, SOS-radio. Don't forget the dash. Leave us a rating. Check us out online, sos-radio.com or Chicago Zone Supernatural Occurrence Studies on YouTube. And with that, listeners, have a happy holiday, a safe new year, and Jason Knight, take us home. Thanks, everyone, for listening to the SOS-Radio podcast. Be sure to rate us on iTunes and Google Play Music. Download our free mobile app by searching Supernatural Occurrence Studies on Google Play, Apple App Store, and Amazon App Store. Visit us online for ghostly photos that coincide with our podcasts, videos, and other exclusive content at sos-radio.com, chicagosos.com, and supernaturaloccurrencestudies.com. Follow us on Facebook at SOS-Radio. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chicago Ghosts. We're on YouTube at Chicago Zone Supernatural Occurrence Studies. Follow Jason Knight on Google+. Remember, that's Knight, N-H-Y-T-E. Email us anytime at submissions@sos-radio.com. And call or text 872-529-0-SOS. That's Chicago area code 872-529-0767. And as always, kind listeners, keep your head up, eyes open, and question everything.
You want to save your soul from hell, riding on our range. Cowboy, change your ways today. Oh. With us you will ride at the devil's herd.